So the other day I came across one of those videos where someone's just kind of going through their elaborate morning routine. You know what I'm talking about. It's the ones where they do like an entire day's worth of activity before the sun's even up. And I just kind of noticed myself feeling like a little annoyed. But I assume these videos are meant to be like motivational. Now, I don't really think motivational content is necessarily bad. And honestly, it's been super helpful for me in a lot of different points of my life. But there was a stretch of time where I kind of felt like it was having this opposite effect. Though looking back, I don't really think it was like motivation that was the problem. But I think motivation is really useful when you're in like a very specific state of mind. Like it was helpful to me when I was already curious or already excited or already like moving on my own stuff. And in those moments, motivational content kind of felt like the bumper rails on a bowling lane. Like I was already kind of rolling down the path, but if I started to veer away, it would just kind of knock me back in line. And that worked because the ball was already rolling. But what if it wasn't? Because if it wasn't, then no amount of inspirational quotes was going to fix that. That's just how physics works. So I started wondering if maybe the issue wasn't motivation necessarily, but more like a mismatch between my state of mind and the information that I was encountering. When I couldn't meet it there, I was discouraged or I was depressed or I felt stuck. And the same ideas that once lit me up suddenly inspired nothing. Honestly, they actually kind of made me feel worse. And obviously, I don't think that's anybody's intention. I don't think anyone's sitting down thinking, alright, time to gently shame people today with my 5 a.m. soaked oats. A lot of motivational content seems to assume that if an idea is just framed clearly enough or confidently enough, then it has to land. And honestly, I used to believe that too. When I saw someone who was unhappy, I used to think that there must exist some perfect string of words that if I could just find them and speak them to this individual, they would hear them and they would be better. They would just go, oh wow, I'm cured. But what that idea kind of ignores is just how much our emotional state filters what we're even capable of hearing. So, what might look sometimes from the outside as a lack of desire or a lack of discipline is often just this same emotional mismatch. And when you're already in a negative state, being pushed, even gently, can feel a little like you're being told that your feelings are just wrong, or that the problem is trivial. Like if you were better, or clearer, or stronger, then you wouldn't be here. Which is a wild thing to internalize when you take a moment to realize that for some people, just getting out of bed required an impossible amount of effort. And if we could just snap our fingers and change how we felt, the self-help industry would have shut down years ago. But that's why it kind of unsettles me when people are so quick to call another person lazy, because most of what we call laziness doesn't really explain very much. It usually just means that someone's in the wrong frame of mind at a really inconvenient time. And we're so quick to just turn these temporary states that we observe in other people into permanent identities. It's like people are either motivated or they're lazy, or they're disciplined or they're unambitious. And it's efficient and it requires very little thought, and it's usually wrong. And part of the problem is just that motivation does not look the same for everybody. Yet somewhere along the way, we decided that motivation looks like early mornings and high output and visible grind, which is impressive. It's just not the universal human setting. Because some people are motivated at night, and some people do work in bursts. Some people build quietly and slowly alone in their rooms. And a lot of people are just really consistent in ways that don't photograph super well. If we only recognize motivation when it looks loud or aesthetic or disciplined, we're likely to dismiss it in ourselves even when it's there. And that's not a motivation problem, that's just a definition problem. And once shame enters the picture, motivation pretty much just leaves. Because shame is not the ideal project manager. What helped me wasn't more motivation. It was accepting that my motion through the world doesn't look the same as everyone else's. and it doesn't have to, and that showing up imperfectly still counts as showing up. I noticed that the longer I kept waiting for myself to feel ready, either emotionally or mentally or physically, the more time I was just giving myself to think myself out of acting at all. And my brain is very convincing if you give it enough time. So I just stopped waiting for this ideal state, and I tried to notice when I was thinking longer about something than was really necessary. And then I would just get up and do it. I would do it embarrassingly and imperfectly and reluctantly. And the motion didn't mean that I felt better, but it meant that I stopped demanding that I feel better before I was allowed to act. And what surprised me is a lot of the positive feelings that I was kind of waiting for actually showed up after I started. Late, like it usually does. And even really small actions mattered a lot more than I expected they would, because they were creating this evidence. Evidence that I wasn't stuck, that I took part in a day, and that today wasn't a verdict. I don't think motivation disappeared or needs to, but I think a lot of us stopped recognizing it when it didn't look like the thing that we were taught. And if any of this resonates, I'm not suggesting that you do anything differently. I'm just hoping that maybe you notice how you're feeling today without turning it into some conclusion about who you are. Because most days aren't verdicts, they're drafts.